Hello and welcome for another episode of Person Behind the Profile. Today, I'm really excited to bring on Andrew Bird. Andrew is the founder of Foundstone Advisory. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, Amy. Great to have a chat with you.
Yeah, awesome. Love it, guys. If you are coming on and you're joining us here live, I would love to know where you're coming in from. I know we've got plenty of people around the world that jump on, so let me know where you're coming in from. It would also be good to know if you are currently in lockdown right now or you are free to roam the streets in your city, because right now, Andrew and we are both in lockdown. So I'd love to hear from you guys. I need some human interaction tonight after being in lockdown. So let us know where you're coming in from. If you're also catching the replay, pop a 2 in the comments as well, so we know that you're on the replay. So I wanted to bring on Andrew tonight, guys, because we are really, I really love talking about business strategy. And I think Andrew is one of the guys that is the perfect person to talk about business strategy. I guess both from your own perspective, Andrew, and then the work that you do with your clients as well. So I guess for those that don't know you, for those that are coming across you for the very first time, give us your little 30-second elevator pitch here, Andrew, in terms of who you are and who you help.
Sure. So, I think strategy is an interesting term, isn't it? Because a lot of us kind of have different meanings and experience with it. And to us, a lot of the time, strategy can be that thing, that sits in boardrooms or executive worlds. That kind of is this mystical thing. But to be honest, what I've learned the last, few years, running, Foundstone from an advisory perspective, is strategy is probably turning into something very different than it has been the last 10 years. And a principle that's helped, me understand and helped our customers understand, as opposed to starting internally within your 4 walls, within your own organization for that big ideas that you think or your colleagues think is awesome. Let's start externally. So start outside your 4 walls. Could be existing customers, potential customers, or even segments that you've never even thought of before. Yeah. And if you start to have conversations there, it's amazing what happens. Insights bubble up, and then you can make choices about where you want to head. And essentially, that's what strategy is about for us. It's about working with executives, boards, startup founders, to really dig out insights from their external world, to really help them make informed decisions.
Yeah, I love that, because I think sometimes we can just go straight to the internal with ourselves around what we think is a good idea and what we think we should be doing. But it's really, you need to have the end in mind, like you just said, and you need to be looking at those external factors like your customers around, who is actually driving the strategy, what the strategy is actually for. And I guess if you heard that in the background there, we've got a motorbike that just revved up the street, guys. So this is what you deal with working from home in lockdown life. But I love that, Andrew. I think it's super important to look at those external factors. So what are some of the, key mistakes that you find a lot of people make when it comes to strategy?
Yeah, so I think it's a simple one, Amy, and I've struggled with myself for years, perhaps coming from a more of a corporate background, where, strategy, you had to have the polished slide deck, you had to have the polished spiel of what your strategy would be. And there was, and there still is, a lot of pressure on the startup founders, executives, boards, to where a term we use is to be the smartest person in the room. And there is that pressure. I think it is changing. So one of the key bits that we work with our customers on and ourselves in terms of growing our own business is shifting that mindset from not having to think that I have to have all the big ideas, that our teams are looking at us to say, where are you going to take us? In fact, our staff and our customers want it in reverse. They want us to simply listen to what's happening in their experience. It could be in relation to the specific product, or it might be a bit peripheral to that. So we find that starting with the mindset that you don't have to be, you don't have to have all the answers, you don't have to be that smartest person in the room, actually removes a lot of the pressure, and then you can start that that external conversation with market, with existing potential customers. And that's where we see a lot of the gems really come from.
Yeah, I think that's great in terms of just shifting that mindset around strategy. I think for some of us, particularly in the corporate space as well, there is a bit of that, trying to one up each other sometimes in the room about, trying to have all the answers and trying to be that person that has all the answers. And when in fact, it's actually the ones I found in my own experience, really, the leaders that actually show a level of humbleness around not knowing all the answers, and the ones that do recognize and are self-aware of where their strengths are and where they might need some help, they're actually the ones that succeed the fastest. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, for sure. And I reckon the last 18 months, 2 years has really fast-tracked because of what we've all been through and are still going through. There are so many unknowns still, aren't there? A lot of us can't, whatever state you're in, probably New South Wales, Vic in particular, unfortunately. You ask them what's going to be happening in a month, let alone a year, let alone 3 years. And typically, strategy has been looked at a yearly basis, and that's still true. But I think, with the unknowns of what we've all been facing, is no one can sit there and say, I've done this before, trust me, listen to me, I've got this. We all have to lean in a bit more and actually listen to colleagues, to peers, to people in our external worlds, and actually really start to be aware of what is happening, so that then we can become adaptive and responsive. Because I think gone are the days we have this kind of set in stone strategy that we have to just stick to. We've obviously got to have some principles that we don't veer off. And as you've mentioned, some of those, fall back on, do we have the right value set and the right culture? A lot of those things shouldn't change. But we see that, with the unknowns and ambiguity out there, the more we can lean in, being a very constant thing. So that strategy is moving away from that set and forget document as such, to it's to constantly, having those conversations with all these different people and picking up what's changed, in the last couple of months. Is this decision we've made from an investment, from a people, is this still the right thing? And then kind of tweaking it in a good way, not flip-flopping, of course, but tweaking it in a good way to match where the market's at. Yeah.
I think just that condensing of time is super important. We don't have these 5-year, 10-year goals or 10-year strategies anymore for a reason, right? Because with technology and with the different environmental factors that we've got going on now in the world, it's just happened so much faster. And so I think there are some businesses that, if they've got the 10-year plan and the 5-year plan, you can essentially just throw that out the window now. And even people in their careers, you have people that are looking 1 or 2 years ahead now, or even months ahead, versus, people that used to have a 5-year or 10-year plan for themselves. So I absolutely, totally agree with that. So what are, I guess, some of the challenges that throws up then, if we're now working in such a fast-paced environment and we've got all these different things that are happening, and we hear the word pivot all the time? I think that's one of those words that we've heard a lot over the last couple of years. How can organizations, I guess, really harness this time to benefit them rather than feeling overwhelmed with it?
Yeah, so I think in that term's a bit overused, isn't it? But I think when people use it, they're searching for something that, is we realize we need to be a lot more responsive and adaptive, not again change direction every 3 or 6 months. So I think what we see is working, and it's giving a license really to go, as opposed to having this set in stone thing, whether that's a mindset or an actual strategy or a plan, to be really conscious that, to go and test things. So, you're never going to have a perfect strategy that it's going to unfold the way you thought it was going to be. There's always going to be things that come up with change. So I think what we see working really well, and this can be applied to whether you're a startup founder with a small business, or whether you're on a board, making sure governance is right for a larger organization. And that principle is this going out and testing, a number of really focused things, and getting feedback and seeing how it resonates with the market. So in a software technology business, it could be a minimal viable product of a small bit of software, or a iteration of software, or for a professional services business, whether that be a coaching business, whether that be a larger corporate business. It's going out there and having a construct of, this is what the service is, and go and have that conversation. It could be a basic wireframe of this is a concept of the service. And it goes back to that mindset. Customers no longer want to have this perfect thing saying, ta-da, it's here. They want to be involved with that, co-discovering what is the problem we're trying to solve here. And as importantly, what is the human problem behind the business problem? Because so often we can get so attached to, okay, we understand what the problem is, let's just move to the solution. But when we dig a bit deeper around that business problem, through having empathy through listening, we often see there's things that with blind spots that we've probably missed that could make a huge difference. So I think it's having that incremental approach. In a software world, it's minimal viable product, but that same principle can be applied across professional services, etc. What we're seeing.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point that you raised there, as well as trying to not get it perfect before you actually launch. Because I know, a lot of the coaches and consultants that I work with, when we're building their businesses, there's an element of wanting to get things perfect to then put it out to the market. Yeah. When in fact, the scariest point, and it kind of feels like you're sort of standing on the top of the cliff ready to jump. Yes. But the hardest part sometimes is to get something, I would say 80% perfect in your mind, put it to the market and use that 20% to then actually get the feedback that you need to iterate and actually mold it into what's going to be a really good market fit, whether that be your message that you're putting out there or whether that be a product that you're putting out there or a new service. So I totally agree with you that there's no such thing as perfect in business anymore. And I think it's the ones that actually have momentum and work with the speed and the pace of the world right now that are actually going to come out ahead. So, do you agree? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. And again, it is a mindset shift, isn't it? Because years ago, and still, we all probably still struggle with that today, or we do, is that we feel like we have to have that perfect thing, because if it's not perfect, what are people going to say? How are they going to react? But I 100% agree that having it, from a design thinking or a human-centered design purist perspective, organizations like McKinsey or Stanford D School, even those organizations are saying, from a pure prototyping perspective, if you're not embarrassed by how kind of basic it is, then you've spent too much time in it. I'd probably like to get a bit of more of a middle ground to that you mentioned, the kind of the 70, 80%. And I think what we miss, if we don't take that approach, what we miss is the relationship building opportunity that can bring to new customers. I know when someone would approach me, or when we're working with our customers, helping them approach new markets, if you genuinely approach some of those customers who are humans at the end of the line, and you have a basic construct, a good attitude about it, and you ask, this is what we're seeing, can we have your feedback of what you're seeing? Generally, people lean into that, and they want to provide feedback. And what that's doing is you're building your strategy, your construct while you're doing that, but you're also building relationships and opportunities with that market, and you're building a broader community. So I think that we miss a lot of that, having that perfection mindset. We miss a lot of the relationship building and building that genuine community. So I think that's a huge thing for all of us to remember.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And I think it's your willingness to make mistakes along the way and maybe look a little bit foolish at times. There's been things I've put out there that I've got spelling errors and all those sorts of things. And you look back and you're like, oh, that was silly. But also it just means that you keep on moving and it's out there, and you can always go back and fix most things later. And like you said, just that ability to build relationships with your market and to get their feedback means that you're actually building something that they want. Which in business is absolutely crucial. So I love that. One of the things that I guess I'm curious about, and I know for a lot of people, there's sometimes like the theory of strategy, and you might get in a room and you've got all these great ideas and you've got, all of these, you come out and you're like really hyped up about all the opportunities that are out there for you. And then when it comes to implementing things, we just spoke about trying to get it right and, some of the things there, but what are some of the other, I guess, sort of traps that people can fall into when it comes to implementing the strategy? Because we know that obviously the implementation is where things really come to life. And so maybe for you in your own business or with the clients you work with, like, what are some of the tips there for people to really implement a good strategy?
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, because I think conventionally, as you mentioned, so there are the traditional mindset is you've got strategy and you've got execution, and they are historically been very separate disciplines. And
Yeah.
there's the strategy people, and then there's the people that execute it. What we see out there actually is that those disciplines are starting to perhaps merge together, because if you have this rigid mindset that we've done our strategy, we've signed off on it, now we're doing execution. If there's not a constant feedback loop between what you've built in your strategy and executing it, well, you're going to 100% miss opportunities, or miss blind spots, or miss shifts in society or the market that should be impacting on your strategy. So we in fact see that one of the most important things is for that strategy and execution to be tied as a single thing. We don't have a name for it, but we're a bit kind of, we kind of generally steer away from frameworks, those sorts of things. We certainly pay attention to them, but I think we can get too caught up in the framework and be so concentrated following that. So I think to your question, when you're executing, is to be always conscious that how is this going to impact? What are we hearing here from this execution? What are we learning to make sure we feed back that execution or delivery back into our strategy? And then if there needs to be changes made, to be really nimble to do that. It goes back to the prototyping example. It goes back to what you were saying, Amy, around, let's not try to have everything perfect, because you're never going to have the perfect execution as well. So I think, it's a mix of, being aware that those things are being blended, and there's not that kind of separate, divide between the two going forward.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's really cool. And that blended approach obviously just means that you've got that feedback happening. And I totally agree with you in terms of just making it a streamlined process, rather than a push-pull, them versus us kind of dynamic, because in the end, everyone's on the same team. Everyone wants to get results. Everyone wants the business to grow. And I think the best way of doing that, like I said, is through relationships and actually making that happen together as a team.
So true. So true. Yeah. And I think your how you've helped us within our organization in terms of our awareness on, external platforms. I think, you've helped us with that mindset that, again, it's not going, having it perfect is not a good thing. And to go and test things, whether that be on, building content, building awareness strategies, for the market, to go and test it and go and learn. And it's a brilliant way to then help make your decisions on your broader business strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those listening now and on the replay as well, conscious of time, Andrew, I love these sessions because we love to just dive in, give people what they need. From working with me, I'm a no fluff kind of girl, pretty straight shooter. So, so I'd love to hear from you. If there was, one big takeaway from this, we've talked about so many different things when it comes to strategy, getting out there before it's perfect, building those relationships with your customers as well. If there's one thing that people should be thinking about when it comes to business strategy, say moving forward, that's really going to serve them, what would that be for you?
Yeah, so I think it's a combination of all those things. There's no, from our view, I know you're not suggesting that, but there's no kind of one trick pony. There are advisors or consultants that say, this is the one thing that you have to do. So I think it's really, strategy to us is about making integrated choices. So there's things, that we make decisions within our business that we say, okay, we'll make that independently without considering this. So I think the couple of big things is to start externally. So we talked about that at the start. Strategy is not about the offsites or being on Zoom inside your four walls, having the pressure to come up with the big ideas. Your first point of call should be, we refer them to a blank canvas or a blank page conversation. So that is going externally, having no assumptions, no formal agenda, and having those blank canvas conversations with your market or potential customers. And I can guarantee what you will get from that is insights or blind spots or things you never considered, because you're going with that very open mindset. And then I think that the second one is, in terms of having those integrated choices. So once you've then developed those insights, it is not just having this one bold vision. That's important. But I think what we're seeing in strategy, if you can have integrated choices that make sense to each other, they can be from a marketing perspective, they can be from a whatever function it could be, as long as they are integrated and they make sense together. That is from a very practical sense, that is going to have huge impact. So I think they're two of the biggest ones that we see.
Absolutely. I love that, Andrew. I think it's super valuable for anyone listening to this. So if you are on, yeah, of course it is. If you're catching the replay, let us know in the comments what you have found most valuable from tonight. What's one thing that you've picked up? Because if we're not winning, we're learning. So make sure if there's one thing that you've picked up from tonight, and let us know. Andrew, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. You have amazing insights as always. I always love our conversations. For those that aren't connected to you already, connecting with you on LinkedIn would make sense. And where else can they find you, Andrew?
Yeah, so I think LinkedIn's the main one. So Andrew Bird, Foundstone Advisory, and then we've website foundstone.co, Instagram, Twitter, all the usual. So thank you again for the conversation. I've loved it. It's always good to have a chat about all things strategy with yourself. So thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome. All right, guys, I will see you on next week for another episode of Person Behind the Profile. Until then, good night, and I'll see you next time. Bye.